I would go to your key people,
Yeah.
your everyday people that are in the trenches doing the work. And I would identify what are those repetitive tasks, because AI and agentic AI is perfect for solving those repetitive tasks. Because at the end of the day, we know how busy everyone is, and we have this burnout and the chaos that goes with everything, and the scary thing of change, especially if we're talking about changing the way your medical practice operates. Hey there, welcome to the Dr. Marketing Tips Show. I am Jennifer, and today we are joined by Manny, our Director of Client Services over at Insight Marketing Group. Welcome, Manny.
Hi.
And we are coming to you live from Transform 2026, which is a human resources conference that's out in Las Vegas, Nevada. And today we have been learning all about AI and AI in HR, you name it. And the thing is that, if you talk to a medical practice person, talk to a hospital, talk to a vendor, they're going to tell you that you need to be integrating AI into your everyday workflow. You need to be putting AI into your EHR. And we all know what that means. That means it's going to be a full year to integrate something into whatever that existing tool is. You're going to have to go through a process with your team to make sure they understand how to use it. And you're always going to run this risk of PHI, HIPAA violations, or, by the time you get to adding AI into whatever your legacy component is, it's going to be outdated.
Definitely. I think a lot of the time when we're looking at AI and the speed at which we're moving, a lot of us don't really understand where it's going yet. So as we're kind of mapping out where we want to go with it, especially in the healthcare space, really understanding that we're in a space that can't move as quickly as what we're seeing happen out in the world. So how do you really start taking those pieces and saying, well, what can I do in-house to get us closer, but make sure that our patients are taken care of?
Yeah, and I think part of what we're hearing at this HR conference is the same thing that you're hearing back at the office. And that is that our employees are burnt out. They don't want another tool dumped on them. They certainly don't want a top-down approach. So what we're going to do in this episode is give you 10 actual ideas of how you can take AI and AI learning into your practice without touching PHI, without integrating into your EHR, actual things that you can start doing right now. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the first one, which will be EHR-agnostic, and really not even requiring you to really tie into your EHR, your PHI, or any of those legacy systems that you've got.
So the first one is mobile policy assistance. So deploying a simple, mobile accessible AI that answers your HR mundane questions, right? How much vacation do I still have? What is in the employee handbook? Maybe even figuring out how to do the initial things when you're onboarding a new person. All of those things can really be taken care of by, not just a chatbot anymore, but almost somebody that can learn and grow as your policies change with you, but their understanding of, the insurance that your current employee might have, or, their vacation time, or anything that they could be thinking about, they can really get that answer at the fingertips, which is where we're meeting them when they're sitting at home thinking about their vacation.
Yeah, and we have a lot of clients that we're already doing like a chatbot for. It's the same type of thing, but you can actually use AI and use agentic AI to train based off of your policy. So whether you're using Microsoft Teams and Microsoft's AI companions, whether you're in the Google universe or whatever the ecosystem you're in, there are these tools now that are allowing you to build those agentic models. So maybe you have somebody that wants to request time off. You could build those agents pretty easily now within your team to allow that person to get answers to those questions, to request the time off, to verify. The agents will, help your HR person by verifying how much time they have left, and then even like notifying their supervisor that they want time off, and even getting it on the appropriate calendars. You could turn around tomorrow, bring a team in, start identifying the pain points at your practice. And if this is one of those pain points, AI could help you, especially through the agentic AI. You could actually start doing those things tomorrow. The next one that I think was a really interesting use case is, look, most of us are in environments where, English is not the only language that is spoken. If this is a pain point for you, agentic AI in particular, you could actually, there are programs out there, you could set it up yourself, or you could, purchase a bolt-on to where a patient calls in for a translation or wants to speak to somebody that's Spanish speaking, and the AI can actually be the Spanish speaking person. The AI can also translate all those documents for you that you have that are English only. And that would be an easy way to meet non-English speaking patients where they are in their language of choice by taking your English only, documentation and turning that into the language that works for them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other side of that we can really focus on in that process too is meeting your employees for where they're most comfortable.
Yes.
I think we're in a space right now where we're seeing so many different employees speak multiple languages. Possibly English may not be their first language, right? So maybe they have a harder time reading these big documents or finding out answers to things that they may need from your employee handbook. And they can read it in English, but maybe they struggle to completely comprehend what it's saying. So if we can meet them in the language that they understand most frequently and most confidently, then we're actually building a relationship where they feel like you as the employer care a lot more, because you're not only taking the time to make sure that they understand their benefits and how to access them, but you're making sure that they understand it completely and they have that full comprehension of them.
Yeah, totally. I think the next one that I find interesting that I think we could translate to marketing and to what you're doing at your medical practice is using AI to test where you might have gaps. And what I mean by that is you can have, let's say, an agentic voice AI call your practice late in the day and try to schedule an appointment as a human and document where, how long they were on hold, how many times, how many clicks it took to get to a person. They could do this in the virtual setting or the phone setting, because AI will allow you to do this, and it will document all that so that you can make operational changes. I would say, let's run AI against your website and see if the CTAs make sense. Let's run AI against all of your marketing messages and see if we're on message or off message, and ask the AI to help you make improvements to it. It's there for you. It's one of those things from a pain point to, if it's a pain point for you that you're having, people are on hold too long and you're losing calls, then let's figure that out. You could even deploy the AI agent to call patients for you to remind them of their appointment that they've got coming up.
I think also taking time to understand the perspective of a patient, or really anybody interacting with your practice, because you could also use this to test your referral system.
Yeah.
And understanding, what is it like for a doctor to refer somebody to you, and what does your process look like? Is it too long? Is it not responsive enough? Are they not getting the things that they need along the way? And I think using this type of secret shopper type vibe is really going to create a different momentum for how you look at your business, because now you're getting to see what your business is from the other perspective.
That's right. And because we're at an HR conference, let's talk about something that we all are dealing with. You've got positions you have to fill, and it is a giant PIA to take all those resumes in, go through the process of interviewing the candidates, and you really can't tell, one, what the candidate's skills are, if they're going to show up on the first day, you name it. And the thing is, we have tools available to us to help us with the process of weeding through the resumes. Well, guess what? The candidates also have tools available to them to make the resumes sound better, so it will get past the AI bots and the engines. So, we could use AI to build an agentic system that helps you screen the right candidates, pre-qualifies them based on skills testing, and only brings you the final candidate that makes the most sense. And I just talked to somebody because I got this great bag that Manny wanted me to get that this vendor was giving away. And I've seen this before, but I got to go through a demo on it. But basically, AI as the first interview. So you pre-screen using an AI avatar that actually looks like a person. It could be a phone call AI, it could be a video AI, but they're having those conversations with those candidates from day one, so that somebody puts in a resume, it meets a minimum criteria, the AI bot immediately calls them, schedules the interview, or says, hey, call into this phone number. We don't care if it's at 3 a.m, it doesn't matter, and go through the initial interview stage. You only get the best candidates, saves time, and it helps you get back with those candidates quicker.
I think something that we don't think about enough is when we're going through this recruitment process, right? The number one thing we know is that you just need time, right? And so when we're looking at doing recruiting, most of your practices probably have one or two people that are being left to do all of it, right? They're being left to review the resumes, set up the interviews, go through the first interview process. So if we're looking at one person taking all of the capacity in this process, right? We know already AI is helping the candidate alter their resume to make it past your AI bubble, right? But if we're able to take a step back and really solve two things. One, most candidates looking for a job right now are probably doing another job. And doing an interview maybe during the day or something else may be a struggle for them. Maybe they're looking to up their career and be able to work in a different place. Or maybe you have a role that popped up recently and you weren't hiring and people have been wanting to look for you, right? We're in the age where people who are looking for jobs have done so much research about you as an organization already. They want to be a part of your organization because of what they know from what they've learned online. So since they've done that research already, they're maybe waiting for that. And we're able to then open up that door where they can have that first interview, maybe outside of office hours, really get you some feedback where you can then start testing some of their skills ahead of time, because some of this agentic can also test some of their skills a little bit. If you're looking for somebody that maybe is specific for a role, if you're looking for somebody that needs to work at the front desk, customer service is so important. That's something easily that could be tested with agentic AI, just, having that conversation back and forth and seeing how somebody might respond.
Totally. And I also think another one is reverse mentoring. This is something that came up quite a bit at the conference. You've got like older folks, some of your older doctors, your legacy doctors, or maybe some legacy departments, they're used to working the way that they're used to working. Pair them with your younger staff. That's good for your younger staff, but look at it also as a way to mentor maybe that crudgety person that's been at the practice for 15 years that isn't interested in the newer tools, and set up a process where older staff can meet with the younger staff to see how they're using these new tools.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised, especially when the younger folks come in, where they will be able to identify processes that you can improve, and then even suggest how you could use AI and agentic AI to help improve that process. Something that, because you're in it every day, you're not going to see it.
Yeah. And I think something that I really took away this week is really moving away from the mentor and really leaning into that friend tour, really working where, we've done this where in the workspace as a whole, we always look at mentoring downwards, but we're really in a time where these people coming in, they're the people that know how to use the technology. They're the people that know what's kind of going on. They're probably at home testing some of this stuff on their own. So really taking that time to, instead of just that mentoring from the top down, kind of the people at the top learning as they go, and taking that time to be able to open up with each other.
I think that's a great point, because especially with how fast paced everything is at the practice, you get stuck in your way and stuck in the way you do it. To have that fresh perspective, and talk about building culture. When you're asking one of those younger hires to help you understand a piece of technology or help you find what those potential pain points are, that's a great way to ingratiate yourself with that new hire. Another area that we've already been doing, but I think it's it's just another way that you could use AI without tying it into anything, is use it to do a sentiment analysis on all those reviews that people are leaving for you on Google and health grades and whatnot. It's going to tell you where you have potential pain points. Now, one of the speakers this week at the conference said, think of your business right now like a Jenga board, and every piece builds upon itself. And if you pull out one or two of those pieces, even if it's the legacy hire that you've had that has all that stuff in their head, you pull out one or two of those and the entire board can come crumbling down. Yeah. And so, using the sentiment analysis on your online reviews is a great way to kind of figure out where those operational gaps might be, and then to take them and address them directly with one thing I've done recently, silly, but it helps me because I'm busy, just like you, is I've set up an agentic AI that looks at all of my emails and sends me a daily summary of what's going on. It could do the exact same thing with the sentiment analysis of your online reviews and send you a daily or a weekly summary of what's happening across the board that patients are saying about your practice, and send it to the relevant people on your team.
I think it's really taking some time to look at that customer journey, right? But I also think taking some time to not only set that up for that sentiment, but you could also use a similar agentic to get that feedback from your internal team, right? And really getting to understand how your team feels about what's going on. I think something that we kind of talked about a little bit, and the next big thing that I think is important, is taking time aside and really setting time aside to be able to open up the opportunity for people to explore and people to be able to take a little bit of time to dive into some of these tools, even if it's not taking the time to dive into the tool, but maybe a brainstorm session.
Identify the problem.
Understand what the problem is, right? Because I think if we're looking at the different conferences that people go to around all the different avenues, whether it's specific to a certain practice or you're going to an industry thing, everybody's focusing about solve everything with AI. But if we take it one step at a time and really solve what is your current pain point, it really allows us to learn how to use it, but also solve things with your team that they then feel like they're a part of building and fixing, right? When you manage from the top down, we've learned for many, many years that is a way that works because you end up getting things done, but it's not necessarily a way that everybody buys into the culture. And if we're focused on ultimately improving culture across the board, which I think really that's a topic that we hear every day, really taking the time to have them do, a little hackathon and figure out what the real problems are, and then how do we solve them?
I would go a step further and I would say, yes, we want to identify problems, figure out that mechanism for, maybe it's a form on your intranet where people can say, you know what, I ran into this, let me explain what the issue is. But also I would go to your key people, your everyday people that are in the trenches doing the work. And I would identify what are those repetitive tasks. Because AI and agentic AI is perfect for solving those repetitive tasks. Because at the end of the day, we know how busy everyone is. And we have this burnout and the chaos that goes with everything and the scary thing of change, especially if we're talking about changing the way your medical practice operates. If we can alleviate some of that stress from our people by getting those repetitive tasks off of their plate, it helps you culturally and it helps you create room to solve those bigger priorities.
And we talk about all of these pieces and we're really diving into AI. But I also want to take a second because I think the next part is really important where, yes, we want you to start talking to your teams, getting people involved, opening up the conversation, right? But you really internally need to set somebody who's kind of responsible for the journey, right?
Yes.
Somebody who's able to really guide the path of where we go. I think everybody will have a million decisions, right? But when you start looking at what we're solving for, I think as a team, you can really come together to rank those priorities and then pick one or two. Do them really, really well before we move on to the next things.
Well, and so like the conference we're at, there's a lot of like really big companies. And, think of it like all the big hospitals. They've got all the tools in the world. They can afford to create these committees and you name it. But the fact is like you do need a couple people to kind of wrangle it. And I think you have to go back to what are your business priorities? What are the priorities of the practice? And then you use that as the sounding board for the potential solutions on where you're going to focus your energy. I don't want you to create like an AI czar within the practice because the reality is you'll never get anything done. But if you can create a mechanism where you can accept feedback from your employees, from the rank and file, this is a problem. Let's try to solve it. Maybe AI solves it, maybe it doesn't. I mean, you're already dealing with this stuff anyway, so this is just a new way to do it. And then I would really suggest, like, go back to the idea of what are those repetitive tasks that we could take off of people. I think one use case that I actually heard that is healthcare specific this week was there were a couple companies that, consultants that do like credentialing for the surgery center, for the nurses, for the doctors. And, they were saying like the old way was you kept a big spreadsheet to make sure that everybody had their credentials up to par, so that nobody fell and was, kicked out of, being able to do rounds or whatever it is, privileges at the hospital. Well, they're just using AI to do that. So now they're saying, hey, AI, these are the details on the credentialing. So before I schedule this person, or, before we get into the new year, set up an automatic reminder for X, Y, and Z, so you never run, short on that credentialing. I think that's another really good takeaway.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up, because I think it gives people a good example of where to start. Because I think, we give a lot of advice in general, how to use AI. And if you Google it, you can Claude it, you can ChatGPT it, you can whatever it. Where do you start is really important. And I think when you're looking at like solving a problem like that, that not only solves you a problem internally with maybe freeing up a little bit of time from somebody in-house having to check on that every single time, but that also solves a compliance issue.
Yes, it does.
And that's way more important on that solution, because imagine sending a doctor that's not fully certified into a surgery room.
Well, okay, what else, from a compliance standpoint, what else could you solve for? Could you solve for all the certifications that you as a practice or an ASC has to keep up with? Could you do insurance verifications?
Yeah.
Could you, there's so many different things that we could solve for. You know your practice so much better than anyone else. And your employees know what the stuff is that they're working on day to day.
Right.
And they're going to be the ones to tell you what the pain points are, what those repetitive tasks are, so that you can figure out, like, look, is AI and Agentic AI a possible solution to the pain points that I'm dealing with? Another one you can do is, you've got the Transparency Acts, where you have to disclose pricing details. Well, that might take a little bit of time. You could potentially build a form that does the disclosure for you based on your details. It's just an estimate. We could use AI to help you create that form, so it doesn't have to go to a person. We could create AI where somebody is attempting to schedule an appointment, or they've got a contact, they fill out your contact page. Maybe the AI calls them to make that easier and says, hey, we have some scheduling availability, or this is the way that you handle it, or, call us during this hour, whatever that might be. And I think there's one more back on staffing.
Yeah.
Turnover is a big deal. Always is. I think we could use AI to track absenteeism. Is somebody calling in sick all the time? What kind of feedback are we getting? Are they looking at the documentation on your intranet? Potentially there is something there to really feel, to get a sense of, are your employees engaged or not?
Yeah, I think it's more, one way I really took this past week is really, we're in this realm where we have so many different generations in the workplace. They all respond to everything so differently within the workspace. That that I think when we're looking at like how we evolve feedback, right? We already know most of you guys are probably sending out some kind of survey that probably a majority of your people don't fill out. Or if you do, you make sure that you have to tell everybody in the header that it's anonymous, because if not, then they won't fill it out, right? And so we have this ability now where we can set up this agentic AI to have a conversation, to be, an external, unbiased HR person that can receive, that can communicate, right? And instead of giving you that in, plain English as to what that person really said, it can preemptively tell you how to handle the situation. And it can kind of work you through, hey, this person's really going through something. Maybe you should take some time to reach out to them.
Yeah, we saw that. We saw that with some of the tools that from the speakers that we were hearing from. Like, how does an employee file a sexual harassment notification or a claim? How do they let you know that they didn't feel safe in the workplace? The large companies are using voice and agentic AI to accept those complaints, to have a quick conversation, and then to elevate it to whoever it needs to be elevated to tell them, hey, this is what your person might be going to. So there's a lot to take with this. So I think we should, there's three kind of, let's hone in on three kind of key takeaways. I think the first takeaway is don't use AI or don't think about AI for the sake of AI. Think about it as, what are the problems that you're dealing with? What are those repetitive tasks? Let's get that information gathered first, then get the right people at the table to help you talk through potentially how you might use AI to solve one of those problems.
Definitely.
Don't start with the AI, start with the issue you're dealing with.
Yeah. Number two, I think, is, you're ultimately going to be responsible for how you use AI. And I think it's so important to ensure that as you're going through this process, everybody's taking the time to learn and all of those things. But we're also taking the time to take a step back and individually become a little bit more literate as to the process, as to how it works, encouraging our teams to dive in and dig in a little to the tools. I think that'll allow us that opportunity for them to figure out and come back to you with things that maybe they didn't like or they couldn't find or they couldn't do. And it'll allow you to kind of really dive in a little deeper as a team and say, if these things are happening, or, maybe we started a conversation, but, somebody's PHI maybe got into the conversation, things like that. Those are all great warning signs, and you want people to talk about that and be able to preemptively try to stop that from happening. But we're also in a space where somebody in the office maybe drops in a file and they didn't realize that there was a birthday on it.
I think you just hit the nail on the head, and that is something we have not addressed yet. We need to implement training with our employees on proper usage and how those models work. If your employees are using ChatGPT and putting any documents into ChatGPT, hypothetically, your secret sauce is now out there in the universe.
Yeah.
And if they're dumping PHI into ChatGPT, even unknowingly, or your vendors are doing this, your PHI is out there in the universe.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's realistic to say we're not going to ever allow anybody to use AI in our practice, because you can't block every single thing out there because it's coming at you so fast.
Yeah.
So if you were going to take anything from this episode, I think you need to train your employees on the compliance and the regulatory potential pitfalls related to using AI with your information. Now, there are tools out there. You can talk to your IT team. They can put versions of AI on your server, keep it protected. We use Google's, we're in the Google universe, the Gemini universe. All of our data is HIPAA compliant and PHI is protected, and it only stays within our universe. Yeah. It doesn't have the opportunity to go outside there. So just make sure that you're paying attention to that. And I think the final thing is that clarity reduces fatigue. When you're constantly changing things all the time or asking your employees to do something more, it wears them out. And so if you're going to make these digital changes or try to solve for problems using these new pieces of technology, I think it's just really incumbent upon you to explain to your team why you're doing it and what you're looking to achieve in the end, because then you get the buy-in from the team and not just like, oh, geez, Jen just dumped something else on top of us.
Yeah. And I think the clarity piece of it is more also taking the time to let your team know this isn't a form of replacing them, right? I think we see a lot of people talk about AI is going to take over all of these jobs and all of this stuff. I really think in the healthcare space, I don't see that happening. Yeah. Nobody's going to walk into an office to go see their doctor and talk to a robot and then go see the doctor and hope the doctor actually shows up to the room, right? We're still going to want to walk in and speak to somebody at a desk and interact with real people. So I think we need to really hone in on the fact that, clarifying the process that this is to make their jobs easier. It's helping them be more accurate, which I think builds more trust with your patients, because if they know every single time they're going to get the same answer when they're asking different questions and things like that. We all know the new employee that doesn't really know, but they're confident enough that they just give answers, right? We all know that type of person. And in every practice, I'm sure at some point there's been one, right? So how do we prevent those things from happening? Because you can lose the trust of a patient just by giving out a little bit of wrong information. And it may not seem big in the moment, but when they figure that out later, they may just stop coming back.
Well, And it doesn't even matter how you're giving it out. You could give it out virtually. You could give it out in a digital, on your website could have the bad information. It could be a person that says it, you name it. So I think this has been a great, hopefully it's a little bit like drinking from the fire hose. That's what we're feeling like. But hopefully you get something out of this. And we could probably give you another 10 ideas right now, but we'll spare you that on this episode. So with that, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Manny.
We'll see you next time on the Dr. Marketing Tips Show. See you, thanks. Bye. If you want more like this, hit like and subscribe so you'll always be alerted to new episodes when they come out. And if you want information about us, visit us over at insightmg.com. That's insightmg.com. We'll see you on the next episode.